Hello, and welcome to the Better Me Project. This is an introspective mind dump of a podcast where I discuss navigating life and mental illness with a creative mind, and I kind of use my creativity as a primary weapon in this battle to kill the stigma against mental health. Because ending the stigma is not enough. We're on a mission to kill the stigma. This week, we're discussing 3 daily habits that I've taken up in my life that are completely changing it from top to bottom. Changing my daily life just in 3 simple habits. Before I get started, just want to say you can follow InTakeCreate on Instagram, intake.create. That's where I post the most, I think. You can find it on Facebook to keep up with almost everything. You can go right to InTakeCreate.com and subscribe, just entering your email, and I'll start doing email blowouts whenever I post anything. And Twitter, Intake_Create, if you're in that mess of a place called Twitter. You can find new episodes of this podcast every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts. You can find the video version on Fridays on InTakeCreate.com. And if you're a patron, you can find it on Patreon on Mondays, the video version. Last week, we discussed minimalism and how I kind of used minimalism as a key to unlock mindfulness in my life. And mindfulness was a little bit more of a difficult inner achievement, where minimalism was a outwardly tangible practice I found to implement that kind of, and they mixed really, really nicely together. And I recommend checking out that episode. Of course, I framed it poorly and half of my head was out of the shot for pretty much the whole episode. But we run with it, we learn, we iterate on the fly, like I've mentioned before. So, without further time wasting, let's start discussing the 3 daily habits that are changing my life for the better. Let me tell you about these 3 habits I'm starting to do that are making my life awful. Heroin. The first habit that I want to really focus on is, I'm calling it active grounding or walking meditation almost. And I'll kind of explain what that is, where I've been really trying to get into meditation regularly. And it's a very deep, very powerful practice that is making a lot of positive changes in my life. I've been unable to get myself to do it daily. I've found it a little bit more difficult to find those 10 to 15 minutes at a minimum to sit by myself in quiet and completely meditate. Usually guided meditation works better for me because my mind goes so fast. And so yes, I found that it was difficult to fit it in every single day in such a formal process. So what I started doing is dispersing moments of meditation. Once I found that my meditation, my longer meditation, was working for me, I wanted to capture the feeling that it gave me. I was inhaling joy, is what I tell myself. I'm inhaling joy and exhaling all of the worry behind it. Inhaling joy, and that's kind of how I use the practice generally, is inhaling joy. Joy is what I'm trying to access. And so I spent a few long meditation practices just nailing down my feeling of joy and being aware of all aspects of that feeling. The calmness, the weightlessness, that worry-free, stress-free, in the moment awareness. I captured that and I stuck to what it felt like. And now what I can do is access that joy almost on demand, depending on my situation, through my walking meditation or my active grounding. Where it happens the most is actually in the hallways at my work. I'll walk between my office and going to get a coffee, and that's at the other end of the office. So down that whole hallway, I used to fill that idle time with looking at my email that I was just looking at on my computer, just look at it again on my phone, or read something on Facebook that makes me sad between my office and the coffee machine. Or I would nervously click a pen down the hallway and probably annoy everybody just because I was nervous, just for existing. You know how anxiety works. And so I replaced that idle time with mindful time, where those steps down the hallway, I'm taking deep breaths and I'm telling myself that I'm inhaling joy the whole way down there. And I'm accessing that feeling of joy that I've bottled, that I've stored away, and making sure that I can feel and be aware that it's possible at all times. I could be leaving a phone call that stresses me out, and I've got all these new projects to work on and everything, and I just take a walk, go get a coffee, access my joy that I have in my life that stressors distract from. Stressors don't mean you don't have joy in your life, they are distractions from it. And so reminding myself that this joy exists within me and I'm allowed to feel it no matter what. It's been incredibly freeing. It's not taking up time I could be doing something else. That's where I talk myself out of meditation the most, is you could be doing X. You could be spending time with this person. You could be writing something. You could be editing something. You could be drawing something. You could be playing something. There's all these you could be's when it comes to sitting down for those 15 minutes. But my steps between my office and the coffee machine, I'm not going to be doing anything else. There's nothing else I could be doing other than mindlessly checking email and wasting time. I'm not answering emails on the way down the hallway normally. It's a waste of time. That's more of a waste of time than just calming myself down no matter what. And the reason I kind of call it active grounding as well is because at certain points, depending on how my anxiety is forming that day, I could really need to ground myself in surroundings, and that kind of takes place in very quick, see something and just fully take note of it. Mostly out the windows in the office. We have a lovely view outside of the office. I can look out and I can find something beautiful every single time. And it's finding beauty is the best grounding for me. Finding beauty in the way that flowers shake in the wind, or seeing geese down in the water, or seeing the highway outside of our work just being a blur of colors and different colored cars and gradients, and the way that they all flow together, and just grounding myself in the moment, in the present, so I'm not worried about the past, I'm not worried about the future, I'm not worried about 10 minutes ago, and I'm not worried about 10 minutes from now. I just need to worry about right now and allow myself to feel all the things that help me progress. So yes, walking meditation, active grounding, keeping myself thinking mindfully, and keeping the brain distracted from its own distractions that it would come up with anyways. Why not do them in a constructive manner? Another daily habit that I've been working on is journaling, and using a journal religiously has been my goal. And it's almost, once you really get in the groove of journaling, it's like having a full extension of your brain. It's like an external hard drive where you can store so much more and create so much more and easily access it when you need it, without it plaguing space that could be taken up by something else, something more relevant at the moment. And I've been journaling everything. I'm working with 3 journals right now. One is a day planner for InTakeCreate, where my release schedules, my edit schedules, and just all that to keep myself organized. And I also have another day planner that I use as a journal. I don't schedule out my days in it. I use the time slots it gives me as a mood journal to kind of take note of different moods that I feel throughout the day. And that way I can kind of track patterns and find, like, maybe at 2 o'clock every day, I lose my motivation to complete things, where maybe I need to replace some tasks at that point with something more constructive for my mental health. Or I could notice that every time this happens, I feel this way. Every time that happens, I feel this way. And it's connecting dots that I don't necessarily connect if I just leave everything floating around in this river. Muddy river. And then I also have another journal for my professional work and keeping track of projects and keeping track of notes and keeping track of IT tickets and just what I'm working on and scheduling out some things and my top goals of that day. And that one actually stays at work on my desk. That way I'm not writing work-related tasks in my personal journal or in my mood journal very often, and I'm not blending it with my creative work, because then I get really distracted and I'm teetering back and forth into different modes that I'm supposed to be working in. And it's that having it all mixed together keeps me out of my flow state, where having things separated in mind channels or thought channels really helps me nail down some really constructive things. And almost everything I've been writing and creating recently has been the result of a journal scratching that I wasn't doing necessarily before. I was kind of just waiting for full inspiration to hit me and catch a muse and run with it and create something, and then nothing, and wait for the next time I have that feeling again. Where now I'm writing something every single day. It doesn't always turn into an article, it doesn't always turn into a podcast or video or anything else I work on, but I put everything in writing. And besides it helping me create more stuff, it helps me escape worry, where I talk in my meditation that I inhale joy and I exhale worry. Part of dispensing that worry outwardly is putting all of those worries in writing very often, and it allows me to give my worrisome thoughts the respect that they deserve, because most of the time they are valid concerns, valid worries that are frankly allowed to be thought, and sometimes they're constructive. So by taking it from here and writing it down, I'm separating that worry from the current collection going on in my head. I have it down, I can refer back to it later. I don't need to worry about that right now. I have it in writing, and it unchains you from those thoughts. I'm a huge believer in the fact that we are much more than our thoughts. We're much more than our thoughts and our brains, and there's deeper levels to who we are. And if we let our thoughts dictate who we are, we can never dictate our thoughts. Where if we identify with ourselves, who we are as a person, we can help dictate some of our thoughts a little easier. And that might not make sense to everybody, but I am someone who struggles with my thoughts. I've struggled with voices in my head before. I've struggled with very, very negative, reactionary thoughts, very self-doubting, putting myself down kind of thoughts. And they're all very intrusive on different levels. And by allowing them at times and putting them in writing, it's incredibly therapeutic. And oftentimes, if I get a negative thought and I start writing it down, by the time I get to the end of writing it down, I've rationalized that negative thought as a negative thought, and I continue writing and almost write it off. I'm worried about the weather today because I dressed too warm, but I can always take a layer off. You know, like, by the time I get to that initial worry, I'm worried about the weather today, I'm wearing too many clothes, then I'm writing it out and I realize how ridiculous of a worry it is. I can follow it up with a solution or a positive thought or a positive affirmation. So that's that. Journaling. Write stuff down. Write everything down. It helps. I swear. Even if you're not a creative or a creator, writer, drawer, artist, write everything down. Get a sketchbook. Doodle. It helps unchain you from your thoughts. That's the biggest thing. Unchaining you from your thoughts. The final daily habit that I'm going to talk about in this episode of the podcast is scheduling. And it seems very basic. Like, of course, a daily habit of scheduling makes sense. But let me talk about it for a minute. Just hear me out. My life is incredibly chaotic. All of our lives are chaotic this year. But I've always kind of stuck myself and lived in a go kind of speed, and chaos just kind of comes with that. I've got 3 kids, I've got 1 more on the way, I've got this creative endeavor of InTakeCreate where I've got this weekly podcast coming out, I've got articles coming out, I've got other projects on the go, whole another channel that I'm building, and I'm working on a lot of things. And then I've also got my professional career. I work Monday to Friday full-time, oftentimes more than that, and oftentimes doing things at home, and it's a big career. It's a big, busy life, and I needed to start scheduling my life tighter and more clearly so that I was staying on task and not getting myself distracted. I started by deciding that I was going to schedule out my days in 30-minute chunks. And that's been working great for me. 30-minute chunks is a really good breaking point for me. And I did this at first in the day planner, the one that I now use as a mood journal. I was scheduling it out in 30-minute chunks. But my career, my IT work, didn't really make that feasible because different support issues would come up, or bigger projects or emergencies would come up, and as soon as I would finish scheduling out a day, it would get completely scrapped because priorities shift within seconds sometimes. So I shifted over to a digital calendar, and I went back to good old Google Calendar because it gives me the ability to drag and move things around as my schedule changes, which sounds stressful saying it out loud, but just the freedom to know that I can move things around and constantly make sure I'm focused on priorities is still really good. And it's also a lovely visual for me if I'm answering a call and someone's got an issue or they're trying to schedule a project. I can easily look. I've got a color-coded visual of my tasks, and I know, like, if they want me to do this on Thursday evening, I'm busy Thursday evening. I've got this project and it is still more important. That helps me. It's a buffer between accepting a task to make sure that I am following the boundaries that I've set for myself, to make sure that I'm not working myself too hard and going towards burnout. I had to set some boundaries and make sure I'm not just yes manning and taking on everything, even low priority issues, and hammering everything out as fast as I could. I worked that way for too long doing it, and I was on a fast track to burning out. So by setting some more boundaries and scheduling and sticking to my schedule and reflecting on my schedule to see where things fit in, and possibilities of batching tasks, which is a whole nother topic. Batching tasks is a whole nother topic that I'm really working hard on right now. But schedule your stuff. Use your Google Calendar. Open it up and take a look at it every now and then. Add things in when you know you have something you're going to work on. If you have something due on Thursday, put in the due on Thursday, and also put in the finalize on Wednesday, the edit on Tuesday, the write on Monday. Schedule everything you can if it's going to take up your time, because then you wind up scrambling and making stressed out decisions on your priorities, and being stressed out is the wrong place to question your priorities. You have to be clear-minded to know your priorities most of the time, because the whole idea behind a stressor is that stress makes it seem like a priority at that moment, no matter what. It jumps the line, comes to the front of the book signing, and pushes everyone out of the way, if you remember my last metaphor from before. Different episode. You wouldn't get it if this is your first time. Go back and watch some more. I'm just joking. Please subscribe. So let's recap a little bit. I've got 3 daily habits that are changing my life. They're keeping me grounded, they're keeping me mindful, and they're keeping me accountable for the things in my life that I need to be accountable and mindful and respectful of, and keeping me grounded along the way, which is beyond important to anybody who struggles with anxiety. And I use active grounding and accessing joy on demand. I use journaling to express myself and escape worrisome thoughts, and I schedule my days. These habits have changed my life. They're actively changing my life. But doing them alone might not have that same effect. I've done all of these things before and they never had the effect that they're having now. But why they're working now is that I have a genuine, deep passion for bettering myself, for fighting my mental health, for getting my feet steady underneath me, for building a healthy, happy family and a healthy, happy, creative endeavor. I'm incredibly determined at this point to get to a better point and to stay at this better point that I've gotten to as well. It's the motivation that we discuss, the issues behind motivation, and it takes mindset shifts for these things to be effective. And that's why I talked about minimalism last week, was that the minimalism was what instigated this mindset shift to being purposeful and mindful about my habits and what I do every day, and kind of coming to terms to the idea that life doesn't just get better, we have to make it better. And that sucks. Young me kind of just waited for life to get better. And it could be argued that over time things do, and you can say it gets better, but we have to work to make things better. We have to be grateful for the good that we have and not dwell on the negatives. And really, that's what these 3 habits have done for me, is avenues to express my gratitude to the universe, to my surroundings, to my thoughts, and to my daily life. And I hope some of them help you, or I hope it was an interesting talk to listen to. Before I end this episode, I've been doing a weekly dose of inspiration, where just something that's inspired me this week. I did Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and then I did Studio Ghibli movie, Spirited Away. And this week, a little bit different. Family has been my inspiration this week. And recently, we lost a family member. They've passed away. And that's happened quite a bit in the last few years for us. I've lost loved one after loved one, and often it's kind of shrouded in surprise, which is how death works most of the time, I guess. But the latest one really hit me. The person in our family that we lost was the most positive person, the biggest positive force that I've ever met in my life. And they were a complete embodiment of the fighting spirit that goes along with our family. And after finding out that we lost that family member, I felt just a kick in the ass to get motivated. I was flushed with positivity and a new strength within myself that I've had since thinking about her, and her as a person and as a fighter and as a motivator. And so yeah, this week's motivation, or this week's dose of inspiration, is family. And to look around at those you love and not take them for granted, and to really understand the beauty and magic in all of the people in our lives, not just family. I know that can be triggering for a lot of people who have tough relationships with their family. And if you have friends that are close enough to be family, or coworkers who are close enough to be family in your mind, or just the people around you are incredible. The people around you are unique. The people around you have stories and paths of their own, and there's so much inspiration that we can find from each other. And I'm making it a mission moving forward to not take people for granted, and to cherish all the motivation and inspiration that I can find within the lovely people in my life and in my family. Thank you for watching. I'm not going to plug all my social medias after that spiel. You can find InTakeCreate wherever you wish to find it. Thank you for watching. Think, be, create.